He's nothing but a broke old man, Mom. Look at him. The microphone shrieked, echoing through the massive crystal-lit hall. 400 guests went silent. My son Jason stood on the stage, his face flushed with champagne and cruelty, pointing a shaking finger right at my new husband. My heart stopped. I froze. Beside me, Henry didn't move. He just adjusted his thrift store tie, his face calm, unreadable. Seriously? Jason laughed, and it was a cold, hard sound. You're marrying a guy who fixes toilets for a living? In front of all my friends, it's embarrassing. His wife, Brittany, covered her mouth, giggling like it was the funniest joke in the world. I felt the tears burning my eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but then Henry squeezed my hand. He stood up slowly. He didn't look angry. He looked ... ready. Sit down, son, Henry said softly. Or what? Jason sneered. You're gonna unclog my drain? Henry smiled. A terrifyingly calm smile. No, he whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget. And right then, the doors to the ballroom burst open. But getting ahead of myself to understand why my own son tried to destroy my happiness. And the shock that was coming for all of us. You have to understand where we started. It wasn't always like this. Years ago, it was just me and Jason against the world, my first husband. Mike passed away when Jason was only 7. It was sudden. One day he was there laughing and grilling burgers in the backyard, and the next he was gone. A heart attack. It broke me. I remember sitting on the floor of our small kitchen. Bills spread out around me like a sea of white paper, sobbing until my chest ached. We had nothing. Mike didn't have life insurance. The house was mortgaged to the hilt. But I looked at Jason, his little messy hair, those big confused eyes, and I made a promise. I will never let you suffer, I whispered. I will give you everything. And I did. But maybe that was my mistake. I worked 3 jobs. I scrubbed floors at the hospital during the day, waited tables at a diner in the evenings, and did freelance transcription until my fingers cramped at night. I was always tired. Bone-dashed tired. But Jason had the best sneakers. He played travel baseball. When he turned 16, he took out a loan. I couldn't afford to buy him a reliable car so he wouldn't be embarrassed driving a clunker. Thanks, Mom, he'd say, grabbing the keys without looking me in the eye. I told myself it was okay. I told myself he was just a teenager. He went to a private university. I refinanced the house. He wanted to study business. I'm going to be rich, Mom, he told me. Then I'll take care of you. I clung to those words. But as the years went on, Jason changed. He met Brittany in his senior year. She came from money. Big money. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships. And her mother had never worked a day in her life. Brittany was beautiful, sure, but she was sharp. Like broken glass. The first time I met her, she looked at my small, cozy living room and wrinkled her nose. Oh, she said, it's quaint. Jason laughed. A nervous, eager laugh I hadn't heard before. Yeah, Mom's always been simple. Simple. That word hurt more than it should have. After graduation, Jason got a job at Brittany's dad's company. He started wearing tailored suits. He started talking about assets and networking. Stopped coming over for Sunday dinner. I'm busy, Mom, he'd say when I called. Brittany and I have a gala. You wouldn't understand. I felt him slipping away. My little boy was gone, replaced by this stranger who looked at his watch every time I spoke. I was lonely. The house was too quiet. Then I met Henry. It was a Tuesday. I was sitting on a bench in the park eating a sandwich on my lunch break from the hospital. A man was kneeling by the flower bed nearby, struggling with a stubborn weed. He was wearing faded jeans, a stained t-shirt, and old work boots. He looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. He had kind eyes, crinkles at the corners that showed he smiled a lot. These dandelions are tough, he chuckled. Tenacious little things. I smiled. They just want to survive. He nodded, standing up and brushing the dirt off his knees. Don't we all? I'm Henry, Sarah. We started talking. Just like that. He told me he was retired. He said he used to work in logistics and management, but now he just liked to keep busy. He volunteered at the park, fixed things for neighbors, lived in a small apartment downtown. He was simple. He was sweet. He didn't care about money. He cared about people. We started meeting for coffee. Then dinner at a little hole-in-the-wall Italian place. For the first time in 20 years, I felt seen. Not as a mother, not as an employee, but as Sarah Henry listened to me. He held my hand when I talked about Mike. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt. 6 months later, he proposed. It wasn't a diamond ring. It was a simple gold band he'd found at an antique shop. "I don't have much, Sarah," he said, looking vulnerable, "but I have a lot of love left to give, and I want to give it to you." I said yes. I was so happy I felt like I was floating. But then I had to tell Jason I invited Jason and Brittany to dinner. I wanted it to be special, so I splurged on a nice steakhouse. Henry wore his best sport coat. It was a little outdated, the elbows slightly worn, but he had pressed it carefully. He looked handsome to me. We arrived early. I was nervous. "Don't worry," Henry said, squeezing my hand under the table. "He loves you. He'll be happy for you." When Jason and Brittany walked in, the air in the restaurant seemed to drop 10 degrees. Brittany was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my car. Jason looked impatient. "Hey, Mom," Jason said, barely looking at me. He sat down and immediately checked his phone. "Jason, Brittany," I said, my voice trembling a little. "This is Henry." Jason looked up. He scanned Henry from head to toe. He saw the worn jacket, the rough hands, the cheap watch. "Henry," Jason said flatly. "Mom said you're retired." "That's right." Henry smiled warmly. "Used to work in the city. Now I take it easy." "Doing what?" Brittany asked, popping a piece of bread into her mouth. "Gardening. Bit of this, bit of that," Henry said. "I like to work with my hands." Jason exchanged a look with Brittany. A look that said, "Loser." "So," Jason said, leaning back, "who's paying for dinner?" "I am," I said quickly. "My treat." Jason smirked. "Good, because usually the man pays." "But ... he trailed off, looking at Henry's water glass. My face burned. "Jason, that's rude." "I'm just saying, Mom," he shrugged. "You need to be careful. Lots of guys out there looking for a free ride. A nurse's pension isn't a fortune, but it's something." Henry didn't flinch. He just took a sip of water. "I assure you, Jason, I'm not after your mother's money. I have everything I need." Brittany laughed. A sharp little bark. "Right? That's what they all say." I wanted to crawl under the table, but I took a deep breath. "Actually," I said, "we have news. Henry and we're getting married." Silence. Jason dropped his fork. It clattered against the plate. "You're what?" he asked. "We're getting married," I repeated, forcing a smile. "In 3 months?" Jason looked at Henry, then at me. His face turned red. "You're joking?" he said. "Mom, look at him. He's a nobody. You're going to marry a janitor." "I wasn't a janitor," Henry said calmly. "But there is honor in all work, son." "Don't call me son," Jason snapped. "Jason," I cried. "Stop it. I love him. Love." Jason stood up. People were staring. "Mom, you're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing us. What are we supposed to tell people?" "That my mother is marrying a broke old man she met in a park." "You tell them I'm happy," I said, my voice shaking. "Happy doesn't pay the bills." Brittany chimed in, checking her nails. "And honestly, Sarah, think about the optics. We have a reputation. We're leaving," Jason said. He threw his napkin on the table. "If you go through with this, don't expect us to pay for a dime of the wedding. In fact, don't expect us to be happy about it." I stormed out. I sat there, stunned. Tears rolled down my cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Henry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." Henry reached across the table and wiped a tear from my cheek. "It's okay," he said softly. "He's protective. He'll come around." But I knew my son. and I had a sinking feeling that he wouldn't. The next few months were a nightmare. Jason and Courtney refused to help with anything. In fact, they made demands. "We're coming," Jason said over the phone. "It has to be at the Grand Oak Hotel. We can't be seen at some community center, Mom. My boss might be there." "The Grand Oak." I gasped. "Jason, that's $500 a plate. I can't afford that." "We'll figure it out," he said. "Or we're not coming." I looked at my savings. It was my retirement money. I'll try," I said weakly. Why did I do it? Why did I let him bully me? Because he was my son. Because I wanted him there. Because I kept hoping that if I gave him what he wanted, he would be this sweet boy I raised again. I drained my savings. I booked the Grand Oak. Henry tried to stop me. "Sarah," he said one night as I was stressing over the guest list, "we don't need a big wedding. Let's just go to the courthouse. Use that money for us. For a trip." "I can't," I said. "Jason wants this. It's the only way he'll come." Henry looked at me with a strange expression. It wasn't pity. It was something else. Calculation. "All right," he said. "If this is what you want, but, Sarah, don't let them break you." "I'm fine," I lied. But things only got worse. 2 weeks before the wedding, Jason called me. He said, "Brittany and I were thinking, since you're spending all this money on the wedding, what about our inheritance?" "Your what?" "You know, Dad's life insurance wasn't much, but you have the house. If you marry this guy, does he get the house if you die?" I felt sick. "Jason, I'm not planning on dying soon. We just need to protect the assets," he said coldly. "We want you to sign the house over to us now. Before the wedding, just in case Henry tries anything." "I am not doing that," I said, finally finding a backbone. "This is my home, Jason." "Fine," he spat. "But don't come crying to me when he steals everything you have." He hung up. I sat on the couch and cried for an hour. Henry came in. He had been out running errands. He saw my face and knew. He sat down beside me. He didn't say anything. He just held me. "He thinks you're a gold digger," I sobbed. "He thinks you're a loser." Henry let out a low, dry chuckle. "Sticks and stones, Sarah. Sticks and stones." "But it hurts," I said. "He's my son." "I know," Henry said. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street. "Sometimes people need to see the truth with their own eyes before they understand." "What do you mean?" "Nothing," he smiled. "Don't worry about it. Just focus on being a beautiful bride." The day of the wedding arrived. I should have been happy. But my stomach was in knots. The Grand Oak was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, waiters in tuxedos. It was everything Jason wanted. I was in the bridal suite, putting on my dress. It was a simple cream gown. I felt beautiful for the first time in years. Then Brittany walked in. She didn't knock. She was wearing a bright red dress that was clearly meant to grab attention. "Well," she said, looking me up and down, "it's nice. For your age." "Thank you, Brittany," I said, trying to keep the peace. "So," she said, leaning against the doorframe, "is Henry nervous?" "He's fine." "I bet he is," she laughed. "He's hit the jackpot, hasn't he? Moving into your house, getting all this free food. I bet he's never seen this much shrimp in his life." "Henry is a good man," I said sharply. "He loves me." "Please," she scoffed. "He's a leech, Sarah, and everyone knows it. Jason is only here to make sure you don't sign anything stupid." She turned and walked out. I took a deep breath. "Don't let them ruin this," I told myself. "Just get through the ceremony." The ceremony was beautiful. Henry looked handsome in his suit. It was a new one I had bought him. He looked at me with so much love that the rest of the room disappeared. When we said "I do," I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was his wife. We were a team. But the reception, that was where the nightmare began. We walked into the ballroom. The guests applauded. But I noticed something. Half the room was filled with Jason and Brittany's friends. Young, wealthy, arrogant people who were drinking heavily and whispering behind their hands. Jason had invited them. On my dime. We sat at the head table. Jason and Brittany were seated right next to us. The dinner was served: filet mignon and lobster. I saw Jason whispering to his friends at the next table. They were looking at Henry and snickering. Henry ignored them. He was cutting his steak calmly, chatting with my sister. Then the speeches began. My sister gave a lovely toast. My best friend cried and hugged me. Then the DJ announced, "And now a few words from the son of the bride." My stomach dropped. Jason stood up. He had a glass of scotch in one hand and the microphone in the other. He swayed slightly. "Thanks," he said into the mic. The room went quiet. So Jason started pacing back and forth. "My mom got married." Again, a few people chuckled nervously. "You know," he continued, "Mom has always been ... generous. She gives and gives, sometimes to the wrong people." He looked directly at Henry. "I mean, let's be real." Jason laughed. "We all know what this is. Mom was lonely. And Henry, well, Henry needed a place to stay, right?" The room gasped. "Jason, stop," I whispered, reaching for his arm. He pulled away. "No, let's be honest," he shouted. "Look at this guy. He drives a 1998 Ford truck. He buys his clothes at Goodwill. And now he's sitting here eating $80 steak that my mother paid for." Brittany was cackling at the table. "Tell M, babe," she yelled. "He's a loser." Jason roared, pointing at Henry. "That's a stepfather." "No, he's a charity case. He's a broke old man who tricked my mother." The silence was deafening. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. I looked at Henry. He placed his fork down gently. He dabbed his mouth with his napkin. He didn't look hurt. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked ... disappointed. "Are you done?" Henry asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the silent room. "No, I'm not done." Jason yelled, "I want you out. I want you to annul this marriage and get out of my mother's house. You're a fraud." "A fraud," Henry repeated. He nodded slowly. Then he reached into his pocket. I thought he was reaching for a tissue, or maybe his reading glasses, but he pulled out a phone. A sleek black phone that looked very expensive. He pressed one button. "Now," Henry said into the phone. Jason laughed. "Who are you calling?" "The retirement home." Henry stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "No," Henry said, his eyes locking onto Jason's. "I'm calling the owners of this hotel." "You're calling the owner?" Jason mocked. "What are you going to do? Complain about the soup?" Henry smiled, and for the first time I saw a spark of something dangerous in his eyes. "No," Henry said. "I'm calling myself Anne." That's when the doors flew open. 6 men in black suits marched into the ballroom. They moved in perfect unison, like soldiers or predators. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the shallow breathing of 400 guests. Jason lowered the microphone, his mouth hanging open. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. "What is this?" he stammered. "Who invited the bouncers?" Brittany laughed nervously. "Probably the nursing home coming to collect him." But nobody else laughed, because walking behind the 6 men was a man I recognized. It was Mr. Sterling, the general manager of the Grand Oak Hotel. I had met him when I booked the venue. He was a stiff, terrifying man who had looked down his nose at my budget. He was the kind of man who didn't walk. He glided. But right now, he looked terrified. He was sweating. His face was pale. He was wringing his hands together. He walked straight past Jason. He walked straight past the stunned guests. He walked right up to the head table, and he bowed. Actually bowed. "To Henry, Mr. Carmichael," Mr. Sterling said, his voice trembling. "I am so incredibly sorry. We didn't know you were." In residence, I froze. Mr. Carmichael. I looked at Henry, my husband, the man who fixed toilets and fought dandelions. He was calmly wiping his mouth with a napkin. "It's all right, Sterling," Henry said. His voice was different now, sharper, more commanding. "I didn't want to fuss. I just wanted a quiet wedding." "Course, sir," Sterling said. pulling a handkerchief to wipe his forehead. But had we known? The presidential suite. The vintage champagne ... Wait a minute, Jason interrupted. He jumped off the stage and stormed over to the table. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. What is this? Jason spat. Is this a joke? Did you hire an actor, Mom? To make your loser husband look important? Jason, I gasped. Shut up, Mom, he snapped. He turned to Mr. Sterling. Hey, buddy, how much is he paying you? My father-in-law is Richard Henderson. He owns Henderson Auto. I can buy and sell you. Mr. Sterling stood up straight. He looked at Jason with a mix of pity and disgust. Young man, Sterling said coldly, Mr. Henderson is a valued guest, but Mr. Carmichael owns this hotel. Jason blinked. What? He owns the hotel, Sterling repeated. In fact, he owns the Grand Oak chain. All 40 locations worldwide. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. I felt the room spin. Henry. My Henry, that's a lie. Brittany screeched from the table. Look at his shoes. They're from Walmart. Henry stood up slowly. He looked at Brittany. Then he looked at Jason. They're comfortable shoes, Henry said simply. And when you spend 40 years building a logistics empire from the ground up, you stop caring about what people think of your footwear. He turned to me. His eyes were soft again. Just for a second. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Sarah, he whispered. I wanted to be sure. Sure of what? I breathed. Sure that you loved me, he said. Not the money. Not the hotels. Just Henry. Tears pricked my eyes. I do love you. Just Henry. I know. He smiled. And that makes you the richest woman in the world to me. Oh, give me a break. Jason yelled. He threw the microphone onto the table. It made a horrible screeching sound that made everyone wince. You expect us to believe this? Jason sneered. You're a con artist. You probably stole that name. If you're a billionaire, why were you digging in the dirt at the park? Henry's expression hardened. The warmth vanished. 'Cause I retired, Henry said. And I like gardening. It's honest work. Unlike what you do, Jason. What I do. Jason laughed. I'm a vice president at Henderson Auto. I make 6 figures. You're a nepotism hire, Henry corrected him calmly. And you're not a vice president anymore? Excuse me? Henry pulled out his phone again. He tapped the screen and held it up. I made a call before the speeches started, Henry said. To Brittany's father, Richard. Brittany stood up, her face twisting in anger. You don't know my dad? I know his bank, Henry said. And I know he's been trying to sell Henderson Auto for 6 months because he's drowning in debt. He just didn't want you to know the gravy train was ending. Jason and Brittany exchanged a panicked look. That's a lie. Brittany screamed.
Is it? Henry raised an eyebrow. I just bought the company, Brittany. Signed the deal 5 minutes ago digitally. Richard was very happy to sell. He's actually quite relieved. Henry took a step forward. And my first act as owner, Henry said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper, was to review the HR files. He looked at Jason. You're fired. Jason stumbled back as if he'd been punched. You can't. I can, Henry said, and I did security. The 6 men in suits stepped forward. Escort Mr. Henderson and his wife out, Henry said calmly, and their friends, all of them. No, Jason screamed. Mom, do something. I sat there, my hands shaking. My mind was racing. My son, my beautiful boy, he had just tried to destroy my husband. He had mocked him, humiliated him. And now he was looking at me for help. Jason, I said, my voice weak. Mom, tell him, Jason pleaded. Tell him he can't fire me. We have a mortgage. We have car payments. You should have thought of that, Henry said, before you called your mother's husband a loser in front of 400 people. Mom, Jason yelled. I looked at Henry, then I looked at Jason. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to save him. I felt disappointed. You shouldn't have been so cruel, Jason, I said softly. Jason's face turned purple. You're siding with him with this old freak. That's enough, the lead security guard said. He grabbed Jason's arm. Get off me, Jason shouted. He shook the guard off. He straightened his jacket, trying to regain some dignity. Fine, Jason spat. Fire me, keep your stupid hotel. I don't care, we don't need you. He looked at me with eyes so cold I shivered. But don't think you've won, Mom, Jason hissed. You still signed the papers. My heart stopped. The papers? What papers? Henry asked sharply. The ones she signed this morning, Jason smirked. A cruel, twisted smirk. In the bridal suite. Remember, Mom, when I brought you that coffee? I remembered. I was nervous. My hands were shaking. Jason had come in, being sweet for once. He said he had some insurance documents for the house. Just standard stuff to make sure everything was in order since I was getting remarried. I didn't read them. I just signed. I trusted him. The house is mine, Jason laughed. She signed it over, a quitclaim deed, effective immediately. The room gasped. You stole my house, I whispered. My home. I didn't steal it, Jason said, shrugging. You gave it to me, and guess what? I already listed it. It's going on the market Monday. So you and your billionaire can go live in a castle for all I care. But you're not stepping foot in that house again. He grabbed Brittany's hand. Come on, babe, we're leaving. They turned to walk away, heads held high. They thought they had won. They thought they had the last laugh. I felt like I was going to vomit. My home, the house where I raised him, the house where Mike died, it was all I had left of my past. Jason, please, I sobbed. Too late, he called back over his shoulder. But then, something I never expected happened. Henry started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a low, dry sound. Wait, Henry called out. Jason stopped. He turned around annoyed. What now? Henry walked over to me. He picked up my purse from the floor. Sarah, he said gently, did you sign the papers with the blue pen Jason gave you? I nodded, confused. Yes, he handed me a pen. Henry smiled. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Jason, Henry said, his voice booming now, you really should have done your research on your mother's new husband. I know everything about you, Jason scoffed. You're a rich old guy with a god complex. I'm a logistics expert, Henry said. I notice details, I notice patterns. He held up the paper. I knew you were up to something, Henry said. You were too eager about the house, too pushy about the insurance. So what? Jason challenged. She signed it, it's legal. Actually, Henry said, it's not. Excuse me. This morning, Henry said, walking slowly toward Jason. When you went to the bathroom, I swapped the pens on the table. Jason froze. You what? The pen you gave your mother, Henry said. I took it, and I replaced it with one of my own. So she signed with your pen, Jason rolled his eyes. Who cares? Ink is ink. Not this ink, Henry said. He turned to the crowd. You see, in my line of work, we sometimes deal with sensitive documents, temporary contracts, security clearances. He looked back at Jason, a gleam in his eye. I gave her a disappearing ink pen, Jason. The entire room erupted in murmurs. Jason's face went white. What? It's a special formula, Henry explained casually. Looks like blue ink, dries like blue ink, but after about, 4 hours of exposure to oxygen. Henry checked his watch. It vanishes completely. No, Jason whispered. That's not real, that's spy movie crap. Is it? Henry grinned. Check the papers. Jason frantically patted his jacket pocket. He pulled out the folded legal document. His hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped it. He unfolded the paper. Brittany crowded in next to him. Well, she demanded. Jason stared at the bottom of the page. His eyes bulged. It's gone, he choked out. Brittany snatched the paper. Let me see. She stared at it, then she screamed, a high-pitched shriek of rage. The signature line was blank, perfectly, pristinely white. "You tricked me," Jason screamed, pointing at Henry. "You old freak, you tricked me." "I protected her," Henry said, his voice dropping to pure steel. "From a son who would sell his own mother's roof out from over her head for a sports car." "It wasn't for a car," Jason yelled. It was for. "For your gambling debt," Henry guessed. Jason went silent. "Oh yes," Henry nodded. "I saw that too when I bought the company. You're in deep, Jason. That's why you needed the house money so fast. That's why you hated me. You needed her assets and I was in the way." I covered my mouth. Gambling. Jason looked at the floor. He looked defeated, small. "Get out," Henry said. "But where do I go?" Jason whispered. "I don't have a job. I don't have the house money." "Figure it out," Henry said. "Just like your mother had to figure it out when your father died. Just like she figured it out so you could wear those fancy shoes." He pointed to the door. "Go." The security guard stepped forward again. This time, Jason didn't fight. He slumped his shoulders. Brittany was already walking away, typing furiously on her phone, probably calling a divorce lawyer. Jason looked at me one last time. "Mom," he said, a question, a plea. I looked at him. My heart was breaking, but I knew if I helped him now, he would never learn. He would never become a man. I took Henry's hand. I squeezed it tight. "Goodbye, Jason," I said. He flinched. Then he turned and walked out, the heavy doors closing behind him with a final, resounding thud. The room was silent for a long time. Then my sister started clapping. Slowly at first, then faster. Then my best friend joined in, then the cousins. Soon the entire room was applauding, not for the wealth, not for the power, but for justice. I looked up at Henry. He looked tired. The adrenaline was fatting. "I'm sorry for the drama," he said softly. I couldn't let him hurt you." "You saved me," I whispered. "You saved everything." "Not everything," Henry said. He looked around at the half-empty room where Jason's friends had been cleared out. "We lost half the guests." "The wrong half," I said. Henry smiled. "True." "But Henry," I said, a sudden thought hitting me. You're really a billionaire." He scratched the back of his neck, looking embarrassed. "Well, billionaire is a strong word, but yes, comfortable." "And the gardening." "I like flowers," he shrugged. "And I like being normal. Money makes people weird, Sarah. You saw what it did to Jason. I didn't want it to do that to us." "It won't," I promised. "I'm still just Sarah." "And I'm still just Henry," he said. "Who needs to fix the sink in your kitchen, by the way? It's still dripping." I laughed, a real genuine laugh that bubbled up from my chest. "I love you," I said. "I love you too," he said. But the story wasn't quite over yet. Because as the music started back up and the waiters began serving the cake, Mr. Sterling came running back to the table. "Mr. Carmichael," he panted. "Sir, there's someone else at the door." Henry frowned. "Did Jason come back?" "No, sir," Sterling said. "It's the police." My heart dropped again. "Police?" "They want to speak to you, sir," Sterling said nervously. "About the check you wrote to Mr. Henderson." I looked at Henry. Had he done something illegal? Had he gone too far? "It's fine," Henry said, squeezing my hand. "Stay here." He walked toward the doors. I watched him go, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I thought the drama was over. I thought we had won. But as I watched my husband talk to two uniformed officers, I saw his shoulders tense up. He nodded. He pointed back at the table, at me. Then he turned around and walked back. His face was unreadable. "What is it?" I asked, standing up. "Henry, what's wrong?" He took both my hands in his. "Sarah," he said seriously, "there's been a complication with the purchase of the company." "What complication?" "Apparently," Henry said, "when I bought the company's assets, I bought their liabilities too." "Okay," I said. So, Henry said, a slow smile spreading across his face. It turns out the company owns a private island in the Caribbean, and according to the bylaws, the owner is required to inspect it immediately. I blinked. Inspect it. For about 2 weeks, Henry said, starting tomorrow morning. I stared at him. Are you saying? I'm saying, Henry beamed. Pack your bags, Mrs. Carmichael. We're going on a honeymoon. I screamed. I actually screamed. I threw my arms around his neck, burying my face in his shoulder. The guests cheered. The DJ played at last. It was perfect. But even then, as we swayed on the dance floor, I didn't know the full extent of what Henry had done. I didn't know that while we were dancing, Jason was sitting in his car in the parking lot, reading a text message that would change his life forever. And I didn't know that Henry had one final surprise waiting for me at home. Something small, something simple, something that would make me cry harder than anything else that happened that night. The next morning, I woke up, and for a second I forgot everything. I reached out, expecting to feel the lumpy mattress of my old bed, the one with the spring that always poked me in the back. Instead, my hand brushed against silk sheets, smooth, cool, expensive. I opened my eyes. I wasn't in my bedroom. I was on a plane. But not just any plane. Good morning, Mrs. Carmichael, a flight attendant said, stepping softly into the cabin. She was holding a silver tray with a steaming cup of coffee and a fresh croissant. We'll be landing in 30 minutes. I sat up blinking. Across the aisle, Henry was reading a newspaper. He looked up and smiled. That same warm, crinkly-eyed smile I fell in love with at the park. Sleep well, he asked. Henry, I whispered, is this real? He folded the newspaper. It's real, Sarah. Drink your coffee. I took a sip. It was the best coffee I had ever tasted. I looked out the window. Below us, the ocean was a sheet of turquoise glass. It looked like a painting. I've never seen water that blue, I said. Not even in pictures. Wait until you see the sand, Henry said. It feels like powdered sugar. We landed on a small, private strip. The air that hit me when I stepped off the plane was warm and smelled like salt and hibiscus. A car was waiting. We drove through a jungle that opened up onto a villa perched on a cliff. It was breathtaking, but as we walked through the massive oak doors, I felt a sudden wave of insecurity. I stopped in the hallway. Henry, I said. He stopped and turned. What is it? I don't belong here, I said, my voice trembling. Look at me, I'm a nurse. I clip coupons, I dye my own hair. I don't know which fork to use. I felt tears welling up. The shock of the wedding was wearing off, and the reality was setting in. I'm not a billionaire's wife, I choked out. I'm just Sarah. Henry walked over to me. He took my face in his hands. His hands were still rough, still calloused from the gardening he loved so much. Listen to me, he said fiercely. You are the only person who belongs here, because you are the only person who wanted me when I had nothing. But I didn't know, I said. Exactly, he whispered. You loved me for me, not for the plane, not for the villa, just for the old guy fighting with dandelions. He kissed my forehead. You earned this, Sarah. You spent your whole life taking care of others. You took care of Mike. You took care of Jason. You took care of your patients. Now, it's time for someone to take care of you. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 20 years. Okay, I whispered. Okay, he smiled. Now go put on a swimsuit. The ocean is waiting. The next 2 weeks were like a dream. We swam. We ate fresh fish on the beach. We talked for hours under the stars. Henry told me about his life, how he started as a truck driver, how he bought 1 truck, then 2, then a fleet, how he expanded into warehousing, then hotels. I worked 80 hours a week for 40 years, he told me one night, swirling his wine glass. I made a fortune. But I was lonely, Sarah. My first wife left because I was never home. My kids, well, they're busy spending their trust funds in Europe. They don't call much. He looked at me, his eyes sad. I realized I had built a kingdom, but I had no one to share it with, so I retired. I sold the big house. I moved into that little apartment. I wanted to see if I could find something real. And you found me, I said. I found you, he nodded, and you saved me. But even in paradise, there was a shadow. Jason. I tried not to think about him, but I'm a mother. It's a curse, really. No matter what they do, no matter how much they hurt you, you still worry. I kept checking my phone, expecting a text, a scream, a plea for money. But my phone was silent. Finally, on the last night of our trip, I couldn't take it anymore. We were sitting on the balcony, watching the moon reflect off the water. Henry, I said quietly, what happened to him? Henry didn't have to ask who I meant. I was wondering when you'd ask, he said. Is he okay? I asked. I know he was cruel, I know he tried to steal the house, but he's my son if he's on the street. He's not on the street, Henry said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. You remember that text message? Henry asked. The one he was reading in the car while we were dancing. Yes. I sent it, Henry said. What did it say? Henry tapped the screen and handed the phone to me. I looked at the message thread. It was short. Henry, I know about the $85,000 you owe the bookies downtown. I know they gave you until Friday to pay. Jason, who is this? Henry. Henry, I bought your debt, Jason. You don't owe them anymore. You owe me. I looked up at Henry, my eyes wide. You paid his gambling debt, $85,000. Keep reading, Henry said. I looked back at the phone. Jason, are you serious? You paid it off. Oh my God, thank you. I promise I won't bother you again. Henry, I didn't say it was a gift. I said you owe me, and you're going to work it off. Jason, what do you mean? Henry, report to the Henderson Auto flagship location on Monday at 6:00 a.m. Don't wear a suit. I lowered the phone. What did you make him do? I asked. Henry took a sip of his wine. He looked satisfied. I told the manager to treat him like any other new hire with no experience, Henry said. He's working in the detailing bay, washing cars, scrubbing tires, vacuuming floor mats. Jason, I gasped, scrubbing tires. He tried to quit on the first day, Henry chuckled. But I reminded him that if he quits, the debt transfers back to the original owners, and those guys aren't as nice as I am. So, he stayed. He stayed, Henry said. He's been there every day for 2 weeks. The manager sends me reports. Apparently he's actually doing a good job. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, pride, and gratitude. You didn't destroy him, I whispered. You gave him a second chance. He needed to learn the value of $1, Henry said. He's never worked a hard day in his life. He thought he was too good for work, too good for me, too good for you. Henry leaned forward. I'm not punishing him, Sarah. I'm trying to make him a man, for your sake. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Henry smiled. We still have to go home. The flight back was quiet. I was ready to go home. Not to the villa, to my home, the house with the creaky floorboards and the memories. Henry had promised me that the disappearing ink trick had saved the deed, so the house was still mine. But I was still nervous. We pulled up to the driveway in a taxi. Henry insisted we didn't need a limo to go to the suburbs. The house looked the same. The grass was a little long. The mail was piling up. It felt normal. It felt safe. We walked up the path. Henry unlocked the door. After you, he said. I walked in. The smell of the house hit me. Old wood, lemon polish, and dust. I walked into the living room. Everything was exactly where I left it. The throw pillows, the magazines on the coffee table. It feels good to be back, I said, dropping my purse on the sofa. Sarah, Henry called from the kitchen. Come here for a second. My heart skipped a beat. His voice sounded thick with emotion. I walked into the kitchen. Henry was standing by the back door, looking out into the yard. What is it? I asked. Is the sink leaking again? No, Henry said. He turned around. He was holding a small velvet box. It wasn't a ring box, it was bigger. Rectangular, faded blue velvet. I froze. I knew that box. My hands flew to my mouth. Henry, where did you get that? He held it out to me. His hands were shaking slightly. I made a stop, he said softly. Before the wedding, while I was running errands. I took the box. My fingers trembled as I brushed the worn velvet. Jason took this, I whispered. 3 years ago, he said it was lost. He said the movers stole it. He pawned it, Henry said gently. At a shop on 4th Street. He got $500 for it. Tears blurred my vision. $500. I tracked it down, Henry said. The owner still had it in the back. He was saving it. Said it felt too special to melt down. I opened the box. Inside lay a silver locket. It wasn't expensive. It was tarnished. But inside were 2 tiny photos. One of me young and smiling, and one of Mike. And engraved on the back, always Mike. I let out a sob, a raw, painful sound that tore through the quiet kitchen. I clutched the locket to my chest. I had mourned this locket. I had searched for it for months. It was the last thing Mike gave me before he died. And Jason had sold it for $500. But Henry had found it. How, I cried. How did you know? You talked about it in your sleep, Henry said softly. You mentioned the blue box. You mentioned the pawn shop Jason used to go to. I just put the pieces together. He stepped closer and wrapped his arms around me. I wanted to give it to you on the wedding night, he whispered into my hair. But then, everything happened. I wanted you to have it now, so you know that your past is safe. I'm not trying to erase Mike, Sarah. I'm just trying to build a future next to him. I cried until my shirt was soaked. I cried for the locket, for Mike, for the betrayal of my son, and for the incredible, humble love of this man who fixed toilets and bought islands. You are the best man I have ever known, I sobbed. I'm just a guy who got lucky, he said, kissing the top of my head. Now, dry those tears. We have one more stop to make. One more, I sniffled. I can't handle any more surprises, Henry. This isn't a surprise, he said seriously. This is closure. An hour later, we pulled up to a Henderson auto dealership on the edge of town. It was a gray, industrial building. The sign buzzed with a flickering light. Why are we here? I asked nervously. Just watch, Henry said. He pointed toward the side of the building, where the wash bays were. There was a line of cars waiting to be cleaned. And there, wearing a blue jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big, was Jason. He was soaked. Soapy water dripped from his hair. He was scrubbing the hubcap of a minivan with a brush. He looked tired. He stopped for a moment to wipe sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. He looked at his hands. They were red and raw. Then, the manager yelled something at him. I expected Jason to yell back. I expected him to throw the brush and storm off. That's what the old Jason would have done. But he didn't. He nodded. He dipped the brush back into the bucket, and he kept scrubbing. He looks different, I whispered. He's learning, Henry said. It's hard work, honest work, it changes a man. Jason turned around to grab a hose, and for a split second, he looked across the parking lot. He saw our car. I froze. I wanted to duck. But Jason didn't look away. He locked eyes with me through the windshield. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He didn't look angry. He just nodded, a small, respectful nod. And then he turned back to the minivan and started spraying it down. I let out a long, slow breath. He's going to be okay, I said. Isn't he? I think so, Henry said. Give him 6 months, maybe a year. When he's worked off the debt, we'll see. Maybe he'll be ready to be a son again. I can wait, I said. I know you can, Henry smiled. You're patient. He put the car in reverse. Ready to go home. Yes, I said. Let's go home. 6 months passed. Life went back to normal, or as normal as it can be when your husband secretly owns 40 hotels. We didn't move. We stayed in my house. Henry liked the porch, he liked the neighbors. He eventually bought a new truck, a slightly newer Ford but still used. I don't want to look like a show-off, he said. I kept working at the hospital, but only part-time. I liked my job. I liked feeling useful. And Jason. He was still working at the car wash. Brittany had left him, of course. The moment the money ran dry, she filed for divorce and moved to Miami with a personal trainer. It hurt Jason, I know, but it was the best thing that could have happened to him. Without her voice in his ear, without the pressure to be rich and flashy, he started to calm down. He called me last week. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice sounded deeper, clearer. I just wanted to see how you were." "I'm good, honey," I said. "How are you?" "Tired," he laughed, a real laugh. "My back kills, but I got promoted. I'm allowed to drive the cars into the bay now." "That's great, Jason," I said genuinely. "Yeah," he paused. "Mom, tell Henry I said thanks." "I will." "And Mom." "Yes." "I'm sorry for everything. I was a monster." "I know," I said softly, "but you're getting better." "I'm trying," he said. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too." We hung up. I walked out onto the back porch. It was sunset. The sky was a brilliant mix of orange and purple. Henry was there, kneeling in the flower bed. He was planting petunias. He looked up when he heard the screen door slam. There was a smudge of dirt on his nose. "Who was on the phone?" he asked. "Jason," I said. "He got promoted." Henry smiled. He stood up and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Good for him," Henry said. "Maybe there's hope for the Henderson bloodline yet." He walked over to me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He smelled like soil and rain. "You happy, Sarah?" he asked. I looked at him. I looked at my garden, blooming with flowers he had planted. I touched the locket around my neck. I thought about the billions in the bank that we rarely touched. I thought about the private island waiting for us whenever we wanted. But mostly I thought about this moment, just the two of us. No pretenses, no lies. "I'm happy," I said. And for the first time in a long, long time, I really meant it. Henry kissed me, a slow, sweet kiss. "Good," he said, "because I was thinking, maybe we should fix that fence tomorrow. It's leaning a little to the left." I laughed. "You just want to use your power tools." "Guilty," he grinned. We stood there as the sun went down, watching the fireflies come out, two people who had found each other when they least expected it. And we lived happily ever after, with a big smile.